Hello and welcome to the live package printing webinar, 5 Key Trends Driving Packaging's Future, sponsored by Nortec Humidity. I'm Corey Francer, Editor-in-Chief of Package Printing and the host of today's event. I'm very excited to bring you today's session, which will focus on 5 key trends impacting the packaging industry and what package printers and converters need to be aware of regarding these trends. We have 3 expert speakers on board today who will provide their insight into these trends drawn from their experiences, research, and observations of the industry. Here to discuss today's topic, we have Dr. Harvey Levinson, Professor Emeritus and former Department Head of the Graphic Communication Department at Cal Poly. Dr. Levinson is a renowned expert in the world of printing and graphic communications, having served as a speaker, writer, consultant, and expert witness. We are also pleased to welcome Carl Joachim, co-founder and Chief Marketing Officer of ePack Flexible Packaging. ePack is an all-digital flexible packaging printer, and Carl has more than 25 years of experience in the printing industry. Our third speaker today is Chris Habitz, Business Development Manager, Energy and Sustainability for Nortec. Chris focuses on energy analysis for Nortec customers and works with energy professionals to reduce energy usage around the world. Just one last note before we get started today. Just wanted to take a second to point out the Tips for Attendees widget on your console. It's the blue one with the wrench on it. If you missed the Tech Tips video that we played leading up to the webinar, you can always click on this widget for more information. And just another note, we should have some time at the end of the presentation today for a Q&A session, so please feel free to submit any questions for our speakers throughout the presentation. And with that, I'd now like to turn it over to Harvey Levinson to get us started on trend number 1. So welcome, Harvey.
Hi, everybody. It's my pleasure to be with you today and to share some of my insights into the packaging industry that I've been studying for many years. Well, let me start off by saying, you know that packaging is one of the only growth areas in graphic communication. At Cal Poly, we've identified 37 different industry segments in the printing and publishing field and packaging field, including things like commercial printing, newspaper, magazine, book, financial printing, on and on and on. And of those, the packaging industry is really the only high growth industry in spite of competition from other media such as the internet and the World Wide Web and so forth and so on. So you guys are in the right place at the right time. I understand that most of you, if not all of you, are in this industry, and I want you to know that as my slide says, the largest advantage of already being in the packaging industry is its high growth, and also the supplement of television, online, and outdoor advertising and what they're promoting all enhances the need for packaging. So again, you're in the right place at the right time. I read about 40 different publications in our field a month. And one of the things that I came to realize over the last few years, that hardly a day goes by when there is not multiple articles about the packaging industry across the board in graphic communication magazines. So this is an indication of the interest, the growth, the need for the packaging industry. But there were some concerns. There are some concerns this year that we didn't have last year when we did these presentations. And one has to do with the possibility of an international trade war. This is real, ladies and gentlemen, and it's something that you guys need to pay close attention to. In fact, I have in front of me right now, I'm looking at an article out of Paper Age, May-June 2007, actually this was last year's issue, entitled Trade Wars, the Potential Impact of on the Global Paper Industry. This could possibly impact the packaging industry more than any others. But I've been thinking about different workarounds for you guys to consider. And one is that not all nations, should a trade war develop, not all nations are going to be subjected to it. And you might want to look into, if you're dealing internationally, with different routes to move your products to and from your organizations through different nations that are not impacted, not going to be impacted by a trade war. And then also it might be a good idea to start stockpiling substrates, because it's very possible that in the near future the cost of substrates are going to grow tremendously. So something to consider. Another concern is growing competition from commercial printers. You have new competitors. With the advent of digital presses, there are new competitors. The commercial printing industry has come to realize on the digital presses they could enter the packaging industry to serve a growing desire for short-run packaging and a growing desire for personalized packaging. So this is something to keep in mind, that you have new and growing competitors in this particular field. So as I previously mentioned, packaging is one of the only growth segments in the printing industry out of about 35, 36, or 37 industry segments that we have identified. And why is this so? Why is packaging growing? In spite of the internet and the World Wide Web that has impacted negatively mostly all of the industry segments, the packaging industry has been growing. Now, this is not a political statement, but here is an answer to that question. The focus on packaging by OEMs and service providers is a statement on the viability of industrial and market-driven interests of the Western world, and rapidly becoming a value in Asia and elsewhere. And this societal trend is nothing new, as my slide says, and it is the reason that nearly every OEM of digital presses is focusing on packaging. For example, here are some of the major players. These are the players that made it happen. The Epsons, Esco, Fuji, HP, Kodak, Konica Minolta, on and on and on. Every one of these press manufacturers are focusing on the packaging industry. And what are some of the hot areas that is being focused on? Pharmaceuticals and healthcare, beauty and cosmetics, personal and home care, food and beverages, consumer products, on and on and on. And you can rest assured that in every one of these areas, dealing with the need for personalized packaging, the need for individualizing advertisements and presentations to consumers, every one of these areas are subject to short-run, digital, variable data printing, and the commercial printing industry is picking up on this. And these are areas where the traditional packaging producers need to pay more attention to, and to look further into short-run digital variable as opposed to just long-run static printing. And some of the efficiencies in digital packaging: short-run, shorter lead times, print on demand, minimal inventory, hybrid technologies, rapid changes, regional marketing, and personalization. These are the technical focus areas that all of you need to be paying more attention to. These are the money savers. And finally, in this part of the presentation, by the numbers, Smithers Pyra says in their latest report, Packaging to 2022, $13.2 billion in 2017 will climb to $23.2 billion in packaging in year 2022. Markets and Markets says that global packaging printing market growth from $120.02 billion in 2016 is going to grow to $192.72 billion in 2026, and Printing Industries of America forecasts 12% growth from 2016 to 2024. So with this introduction, I'm going to pass the program over to my good friend Carl Yakum, who will pick it up from here. Carl, take it away.
Thank you, Harvey. Appreciate the nice intro. It's my pleasure to be here this afternoon, or perhaps this morning for some of you. The title for my topic today, How Packaging is Evolving to Meet Consumer Lifestyle Needs. At first, I thought, wow, what do I really have to say about that? But the more I thought about it, I felt that I had a lot to say about it. It's an interesting one because it ties directly to some of the growth drivers that the packaging industry today has to come to grips with. And further, there's a direct correlation between changing consumer lifestyles and the technology choices that packaging converters today are now faced with. The topics that I'll cover today, there are really only 4 of them. I'll start off talking about some of those lifestyle trends, how they impact brands and the packaging converters that supply the CPG industry, how that translates into growth in flexible packaging, which is the industry that I know most about, so I'm going to use that as my lens to view this issue through. Happens to be the 2nd largest packaging segment in the U.S. And lastly, how these trends can and are impacting the adoption of digital printing. Let's start with demographic trends. More people are living alone. Dual-income households are increasing. Dealing with the growing obesity problem in our country. Concern for our environment. And the increasing trend toward buying more and more online. The effect of these demographic trends is smaller portion sizes, healthier eating choices, ideally from local suppliers, and more eating on the run. As a result, CPG brands are offering more products, more flavors, more sizes. Natural and organic food is growing at over 8% a year. Small and medium-sized businesses are prospering and fueling job growth in our economy like never before. And brands are increasingly looking at packaging as an element in their marketing mix. And to meet brand owner needs, packaging suppliers are experiencing demand for shorter runs, faster turnaround times, more sustainable options, more versioning with great graphics, and they are feeling a pinch in how to address these needs, while conventional packaging technology has catered historically to longer runs and lead times of 6 to 8 weeks and sometimes longer. I thought I would use the flexible packaging industry, as I mentioned, as a lens to view this topic from, since that's the industry I know the most about. However, a lot of what I'll be talking about does apply to all forms of packaging, including corrugated, folding cartons, and others. Flexible packaging is 19% of the total U.S. packaging market and is forecasted to grow at 3 to 4% CAGR over the next 5 to 6 years. While the underlying growth supporting flexible packaging is driven by GDP, gross domestic product, the additive growth is driven by a shift away from rigid containers, as well as shelf impact and consumer preference for new and innovative pouch formats. One need only to look at the array of products that come in interesting pouch formats, from household products like laundry detergent to liquids like even olive oil, and even cigars down in the lower right. This one was one that kind of took me by surprise. I learned about it a couple weeks ago. But the barrier properties provided by a properly structured pouch emulates the effect of a humidor. So it keeps the cigar fresher longer than traditional ways of packaging. An interesting case in point can be learned from Scratch Labs. They happen to be a customer of ours. Scratch is a successful 5-year business with products that encompass sports nutrition and natural foods combined. After commissioning a consumer focus group, Scratch learned several things about their packaging. It did not effectively communicate the concept of a formulated sports nutrition product with the natural ingredients they use. They also learned that some shortcomings in the functionality of the packaging existed. The result was to redesign the packaging for their entire product portfolio. A new graphic design was created that made the product communicate better with consumers, stand out on retail shelves. The look and feel of the material was improved. A single-serve portion size was introduced, and new zippers improved moisture barrier and product freshness. Due to Scratch Labs' requirements for order size, the desire to print on demand, print and order on demand, and the time to market requirements, which in their case were extremely tight, the packaging was produced digitally. When looking at the value proposition for digital printing, quite frankly, it's really no different than it was 25 years ago for commercial printers. Short runs, as Harvey mentioned, low waste, no plate fees, which makes it great for multi-SKU orders, even at longer run lengths, and the ability to customize are among the key value props that digital print held then when it was first being introduced into the commercial print space and holds now as the adoption begins in the packaging space. Brands reap the benefits by being able to order to demand and reduce inventory and obsolescence. They run more promotions, they launch new products faster, and in some cases use the power of variable data to truly differentiate. There is also a significant reduction in the environmental impact using digital print over conventional printing technologies. Ozone creation, water and electricity demand, water depletion, for example, are all significantly reduced, especially for short runs. Now, this advantage that digital has over conventional printing technologies diminishes as you get up in run lengths, but nonetheless, for the market that digital printing serves, which is the short to medium run length market, the better impact on the environment is clear. So in summary, there are distinct demographic changes in terms of economics and lifestyle that drive consumer behavior, and in turn, the CPG brands that serve them. Packaging suppliers must learn to adapt to these changes, which oftentimes calls for outside-the-box technology decisions, along with a recognition that today's market needs are very different than they were 5, 10, 20 years ago. Thank you. And now I would like to turn it over to my friend Corey Francer. Corey?
Great. Thank you very much, Carl. Really appreciate it. So the trend that I'll be covering today is how to combine digital and conventional equipment to adapt to today's packaging industry. The reality of the matter is that despite digital printing's well-deserved accolades for the impact and advantages that it's brought to the packaging industry, it still only makes up a small percentage of overall output, with conventional technologies like flexography and offset printing still accounting for the vast majority of printed packaging. While the emergence of digital has created new creative opportunities for converters and brands, while also providing production improvements with its short-run capabilities, minimal setup time, lack of plate changes, the mindset surrounding digital technology has evolved. When digital printing first hit the scene, the question of whether it would be a replacement technology for conventional was immediately brought to the forefront. As we've seen, however, with digital's usage across the packaging spectrum, as digital's usage across the packaging spectrum has grown over the past few years and is trending upwards, conventional printing is certainly not going to disappear anytime soon. So rather than serving as a replacement technology, many package printers are shifting their mindset to digital printing serving as a complementary technology. So the primary reason why digital printing is best thought of as a complementary technology to conventional essentially breaks down to the notion that they are good at different things. While short runs are on the rise, high volume, long run printing still accounts for a large percentage of packaging output, and conventional printing is typically the best choice for long-run production. While sources do tend to vary on the total percentage of packaging output printed digitally, it does tend to be in single digits and relegated to short or medium-run work or specialty work that it thrives in, while conventional presses tackle the long-run jobs that they're best suited for. The industry is rapidly changing, however, and as we've mentioned earlier in the presentation, short-run quantity is increasing. In fact, in August of 2016, I did an article in Package Printing that I interviewed Jennifer Dockstetter of LPC Inc. for, as well as Dave Neiman and Richard Black of All Printing Resources, after the two organizations had collaborated on a study of the narrow web printing industry. In the results of that study that they shared with us for the article, it was revealed that the average percentage of jobs less than 5,000 feet that North American narrow web converters are printing stands at 28%, which was nearly double what it was 5 years prior. So clearly the industry has a need for digital printing, and converters that have not made the jump into the technology need to seriously consider the benefits that it provides. But before acquiring a digital press to work in tandem with your conventional assets, it's imperative to understand the distinct strengths of each technology so that you're filling each with the right type of work. So to provide a quick overview, digital printing's strengths are in its short-run cost-effectiveness, customization, variability, and versioning capabilities, while conventional printing, on the other hand, is ideal for churning out high-volume work, provides opportunities for inline converting, and offers a bit more versatility in terms of substrate compatibility. So to introduce this slide, I wanted to give credit to Kevin Karstedt of Karstedt Partners, who, if you're not familiar with his work, Kevin is a very knowledgeable authority on digital printing in the packaging space. He is also one of the co-chairmen of the Digital Packaging Summit, which is an annual event that we host here at Package Printing. And Kevin often describes one of the biggest advantages of digital printing as the ability to create operational relief in a production workflow. And the quote displayed here is from an article that I interviewed Kevin for a couple years ago, and really describes the concept well. By moving troublesome and short-run jobs off of analog assets to digital ones, a concept called operational relief, converters have increased the capacity on the analog presses and can use them for what they are good at, which is cranking work out and making. So to reiterate, the issue that has really been among the biggest causes of headaches in package printing is that while long-run work is hardly disappearing, short-run quantity is increasing and tying up conventional equipment. What's even more concerning for package printers is that our research indicates that this trend is not going away anytime soon. In fact, in a recent survey that we conducted here at Package Printing, more than half of the respondents indicated that short runs and SKU proliferation were among their top 3 business challenges. But of course, with any challenge comes opportunity, and brands have clearly demonstrated a need for both long and short-run work, and converters that can serve both of these needs will be at an advantage in serving as a one-stop shop for all of their customers' packaging. And by adding a digital platform to a conventional printing environment, this gives printers and converters options. With both printing technologies in-house, you can then make strategic decisions as to which of your shorter runs you can transition to digital and which long runs are best to remain on conventional. Not only does this streamline your workflow, you'll likely notice that it opens up some capacity that was previously taken up with changeovers and downtime that you can fill with new business. So on the topic of new business, adding digital printing to a workflow that once relied on conventional can also allow package printers to provide a welcome environment to a growing consumer trend that is leading to the appearance of new brands that rely on short runs. So we've all heard about the explosion in the craft beer and spirits industries that has led to the emergence of microbreweries specializing in small batch production. Of course, these brands are in need of short-run labels, but the craft trend is hardly relegated to beer, wine, and spirits. And in fact, just returning to the Digital Packaging Summit, this was a quote that actually Jennifer Docksetter, who I mentioned earlier, who presented at last year's event, stated in regards to this industry trend, and that's companies in all printed packaging sectors that have digital presses are really benefiting from growth and profits in the craft and cottage. So as these craft businesses continue to emerge in several markets, it will increase the need for short-run printing. But by having both technologies at the ready, as these companies grow, you can transition them to your conventional equipment as their production needs require it. So as I mentioned before, though, new business can go in the other direction as well, since it's not just boutique or craft brands that are driving the growth of short-run production. Big brands have this need too, as they seek to capitalize on regionalized campaigns, experiment with personalization, develop test marketing campaigns, or even just seek out prototyping and mock-ups for packaging. And obviously one of the biggest opportunities that digital printing presents is its ability to personalize printed output. And this capability has caught on quickly in the commercial printing world, as it's easier to know exactly who the end user or recipient of a printed piece will be. But because packaging doesn't always have that luxury of knowing precisely who will be picking up a printed piece, brands are developing creative ways to connect with consumers on a more personal level. So regionalization in packaging is just one example, and the example shown here comes from Bud Light, which obviously is among one of the biggest brands in the beer industry. And so last summer, Bud Light introduced this limited edition Chicago-themed bottle to coincide with the Lollapalooza music festival held in the city. While the press release from Bud Light didn't say exactly how the bottles were printed, I just thought it would be a good example to share with everyone today as the type of regional campaigns that large brands are looking into that could be a good fit for digital. And similarly, if a big brand is in need of short run for prototypes or a test marketing run, being able to offer these services can also lead you to winning the long run work if packages are there are clear advantages and benefits to pairing digital printing with conventional. There are some important factors to consider. First and foremost, finishing for digital is a different animal than finishing for conventional. The biggest issue is that while pairing digital printing with conventional can improve efficiency and streamline the printing process, if you're trying to finish your digitally printed output and your conventional output in the same workflow, you run the risk of losing those efficiency advantages. Much like printing, an increase in short runs can clog up a conventional finishing workflow. This can then transition the downtime that was decreased on press into post-press processes, merely shifting the problem. Potential solutions to this concern can be the addition of digital finishing systems, whether it's digital cutting systems like laser die cutters and digital embellishment systems. Additionally, conventional die cutting and finishing equipment designed for short runs has hit the market and are strong options for digital production as well. And just another good quote that I wanted to bring up from the Digital Packaging Summit, this time from 2016, came from Kevin Abergel, the VP of Marketing and Sales for MGI, who sat in on a panel on this topic. And Kevin's quote I thought was a really good one, and he said, if you're printing digitally and you're finishing analog for short runs, you're losing the advantages of printing digitally. It's not a fluid process, and it should flow seamlessly. So essentially, what it comes down to is that digital and conventional printing are very different processes, and their finishing processes should be treated differently as well. And just to wrap up my section here, for the majority of the presentation, I've talked about the advantages of strategically pairing standalone digital and conventional printing equipment. But over the past few years, the emergence of hybrid solutions that combine digital and conventional technologies in a single platform has changed the game in many label and package printing environments. Particularly in the label segment, presses that join inkjet and Flexo together have become a single source solution for printing runs varying lengths, even bordering on long runs, that can still make the most of digital's benefits, in many cases with inline converting. A single pass printing and converting solution with digital's advantages and conventional Flexo stations for processes like coating and varnishing provides another way to make the most of these technologies together, marry digital printing's versioning capabilities with the high-quality graphical and embellishment capabilities on Flexo. And while the majority of hybrid systems that have been launched are geared towards the label segment with a selection listed on the right side of the screen here, folding carton and flexible packaging have also seen hybrid solutions emerge or at least conceptually introduced. And additionally, for those wanting to make the leap into hybrid but not ready to invest in a standalone hybrid press, retrofit units from companies like Colordyne and Prototype and Production Systems are great ways to add an inkjet station to an already existing Flexo press. So just to sum up, again, don't think of the emergence of digital printing as a digital versus conventional situation necessarily, but how you can pair the two technologies, leverage their strengths to thrive in what they're best at, and be able to serve the varying needs. And so with that, I will turn it back over to Harvey Levinson to take us through trend number 4.
Thank you, Corey. That was insightful. That was great. Let me start off this trend, the expanding role of interactive packaging, by saying this. As you all know, your cell phone is your access to the world. Your mobile phone, your mobile device, is your access to the world. Think of marketing to millennials and the most present new adult generation that came after millennials. Wait a second. On the other hand, not only the younger generations. I recently read a statistic that between 85% and 90% of adults of all ages, senior citizens, and so on and so forth and so on, have access to smartphones. Let me explain how this relates to the present and future of the packaging industry. First of all, you've probably heard the term smart packaging. It's also called intelligent packaging. And what this does, it provides access to things such as ingredients, health information, and related important information to consumers shopping in the supermarket and wanting to know more about the products they're looking at than just what they see on the product itself. And the new technologies that we've been talking about here, inkjet, photography, variable data, printed electronics, near-field communication, radio frequency identification, mobile device communication with packages, image recognition, and so forth and so on, are all of the capabilities that connect your mobile device with packaging information. And I'm going to explain some more about this. Let me talk a little bit about digital paper and the potential of technology such as Ricoh's clickable paper. The ability of doing variable communication on paper really started with research that took place at MIT's Media Labs and Xerox Palo Alto Research Center many years ago, when these two organizations developed paper substrates on which the image can change. Okay, so basically if you had a certain instruction on a package or a product of some kind and all of a sudden the instruction had to change, that instruction can change without having to reprint the substrate. Okay, well, consider that in terms of promoting marketing and meaningful information to the consumer on packages. That can be done. But let's take it a step further. Ricoh came up with the concept of clickable paper, which allows you to not only change the image variably on a package, on a book, on a magazine, an advertisement, or what have you, but it allows you to communicate with people behind the product. So for example, if you take your cell phone and you aim it at the Ricoh icon for clickable paper, and you have a question about the product or the ingredients, the health information, you can actually communicate with someone, a pharmacist, a doctor, and so forth and so on. And it provides two-way communication between the consumer and the package. The consumer can talk to the package, and the package can talk back to the consumer. This is to come. This technology has been developed. I'm doing some experimenting with it with the book that I'm publishing. So what happens with this kind of technology is the package does not only employ the technology, the package is the technology. This is what's waiting for you in the future, and this is the kind of technology that you should be taking a very, very close look at. So consumers can tap their smartphone against the package with a tag and learn about product information of personal interest, discount offerings, an opportunity to win prizes, and so forth. And interactions grow sales. The statistics show this. I've read about statistics that point out that this kind of technology is more effective. This kind of communication is more effective than social media, which is really not that effective. 10 times more traffic is driven, 2.8 times the amount of time spent engaged with a campaign is the present statistic that's talked about regarding the effectiveness of interactive communication such as what I've been discussing. So it's all about the metaphor, the cliche that has come to be known as the Internet of Things, the way the Internet impacts traditional ways of communicating, the way you can communicate with printed products, with packages, how printed material communicate back to you, and so forth and so on, all through the Internet, all through cloud computing, all through the World Wide Web. This is where the future lies in packaging and other forms of graphic communication. And another thing I want to point out about codes, about tags and codes. These tags and these codes that allow communication can be produced using any printing process. It doesn't have to be digital printing. The codes and the tags can be produced using offset lithography, flexography, gravure, screen printing, as well as digital printing. So mobile connectivity will play an increasingly important role in the retail field in the future. So in conclusion of this section, ladies and gentlemen, you're in the packaging field right now. The future belongs to you. Mobile phones are becoming the #1 source of information for consumers of all ages. You can engage mobile first consumers, not only the millennials, but everyone. They want to know about brand, sustainability, how products were produced, and so forth and so on. It's all about engagement, two-way communication with the package, the consumer to the package to the consumer. And basically, this is the future, and the future belongs to all of you. Okay, so that concludes this section. I am now going to turn this over to Chris Habitz.
Thank you very much, Harvey. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. I'm going to switch gears a little bit and talk about sustainability and energy in the packaging facility itself, so probably your facility, and how humidification can help with that. So generally, and I'm sure you know this, your packaging facility should be humidified, and this is for your printers to continue working the way they're supposed to be working, or stability of your paper products and packaging. And there's different ways we can do that. We can do that with electric steam or pressure steam, which is boiler steam, of course gas-fired humidification, and then evaporative products, which we can split into a couple different categories. And I'll go into this just a little bit here. There's different energy uses and reasons we'd use these different technologies. So going very back to basics, in order to put water vapor into the air, we need to add energy to that water. Steam systems either use electricity or natural gas, whereas evaporative systems will take that energy out of the air. So if you've got some extra heat in your building, which is fairly common in the packaging industry, you'll be able to use that extra heat to humidify. So what does this cost us? And when we talk about sustainability, we're talking not just in terms of energy usage and carbon usage and water usage, although I will talk about all of those things. We also talk about your business sustainability. And in that case, we want to keep operational costs low. And you can see that there can be a pretty significant difference on this screen between going with an electric steam system, even gas steam or pressure steam, down to the almost free, if not free to run evaporative technologies. And on top of that, if you're currently using an electric steam humidifier or a gas steam humidifier in your space, some utilities will allow you to get a rebate on replacing that with a low energy usage technology. And when I talk about low energy usage, switching over to metric because I'm Canadian and I have to work in both, so now you do as well, we have showing the amount of energy consumed per liter put into the air, or power in this case per liter put into the air. So steam units, you're using up to a kilowatt almost per liter of water in the air, down to almost nothing with a high pressure system. So high pressure is just pressurizing the water and spraying in the air itself. And of course that's the power electricity side. We can also look at the humidification side for water. And no matter what you're doing, if you're humidifying, you will be using water, absolutely. So then you have to look a little further on down the line. And where does that water come from? And not only that, where does that power come from that is providing the energy to boil the water or cool your space? And in this case, you can see that for some reason, South Dakota has a ridiculous amount of gallons used per kilowatt hour produced of electricity. But if you're trading out electrical energy for evaporative humidification, we end up seeing a pretty even water use across the way, or even better, evaporative humidification using less water overall than you'll see with a steam humidification system, just because of the water put into the power generation process. So you may have noticed I also said cooling your building there as well in that short segment, and that's because we can cool the building. And not to scare anybody with psychrometric charts, but basically with steam, we add all of the energy into the air through the water, where we boil that water. But with evaporative technologies, adiabatic technologies, we spray water into the air or run air over an evaporative technology or an evaporative pad that allows you to actually cool down the building at the same time. Now, some of you may have just said to yourself, oh, that's a swamp cooler. And technically, I suppose, yes, but we've gotten very good at making these not swampy at this point. So we're able to cool the air, humidify the building at the same time, and save some fairly significant amounts of money, energy, and water over the course of a year. And if we look at this, this is a real-world example that I ran for a customer who is actually currently humidifying with electric steam. It's a relatively large building in the Great Lakes area. If they switch to gas-fired steam or boiler steam, they'd still be spending somewhere around $100,000 a year on humidification. But by switching to high pressure, which they are now in the process of, they'll cut that down to less than $7,000 a year in humidification costs. Now obviously this is a relatively large printer with a relatively large facility, but on a smaller scale this can work as well. You can see that the electric steam somewhere in the $400,000 a year range, so it was about time to switch that over to an evaporative system, less than 1 year payback period on that. Plus, if we're looking at the sustainability side of things, it's 86 metric tons of CO2 that we're removing from the grid in this case, on top of some 120, 130 kilowatts of electrical power per humidifier removed. So it can be very significant, both obviously on the dollar amount as well as on the sustainability side of things. That concludes my short presentation this afternoon, so I'm going to hand it back to, I believe, Corey for question and answers.
Excellent, great. Thank you very much, Chris. Great, thank you for that look into the importance of humidity and the sustainability impacts that it has. So yeah, we now have some time left over for Q&A session, and we do have some questions that have come in during the webinar here, so we can get rolling on those and get some of these questions answered. So I guess just to start, here's one here that can actually keep us on the sustainability topic. Question came in that reads, how much demand does the packaging industry feel about sustainable packaging? So I guess maybe let's start with Carl on this one. And I guess Carl, as someone coming from the printing side of the industry, what are you seeing in terms of making sure that your products are do have these sustainable attributes, and I guess what are some of the the things that you're feeling as a printer on the sustainability side?
Well, we do see demand, obviously. Customers come to us and they want sustainable options. We are looking at compostable and recyclable films. We can print on recyclable films now. I guess my overall take on the sustainability question and how at least flexible packaging printers probably perceive it is that the Flexible Packaging Association invests a tremendous amount of money every year in the R&D associated with evolving sustainable options in films. And I think everyone in the flexible packaging industry is kind of on that bandwagon to look at it, to assess whether or not the films will work in their operation, whether they'll laminate properly, print properly, whether there are any hiccups in the pouch making process or whatever it might be. Questions around adhesives, whether they're sustainable or not. And then the whole idea of recyclability and the upstream issues or vagaries, if you will, around how all that works. So I guess the way I would probably summarize it is I think that it's a work in process. There's a lot of momentum within the industry to find and adopt good sustainable packaging solutions, like compostable solutions in particular. But I think the adoption is at its infancy at best right now.
Perfect. Okay.
Can I jump in, Corey?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yes, Harvey, please.
Yeah, I'd like to jump in on that. One of the key comments that Carl just made is a work in process. Now here's what I've observed and here's what I've learned from printers. They want sustainability, but they also want price. So as soon as the prospect of sustainable consumables come up, they say, okay, what's the advantage and what's the price? What's the price variable from the non-sustainable material? And they typically make a decision on that. And what has to happen is the pricing has to come in line to be competitive with the lower price consumables that might have been used previously. And once that happens, the sustainable products will really skyrocket in terms of use in packaging and other segments of the industry.
Right, absolutely. Perfect. And then I guess, Chris, anything to add onto that one, just before we move on to the next question? Anything in terms of helping sort of maybe your packaging customers help share some of these sustainability attributes to their customers? Anything along those lines?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, when we as Nortec Humidity are talking sustainability, we're typically talking about the plant usage of electricity, plant usage of power and water, and trying to bring that back down to, as I showed earlier, a reasonable level or a much smaller level. And it's the sustainability of the company as well. So if your costs are coming down, you're able to offer lower costs, and maybe that helps bridge the gap a little bit on the sustainable products versus the less sustainable packaging options. Generally, I mean, my degree is in energy and sustainability, so I like to go with the sustainable route. But from the Nortec side and the humidification side, there's some ways that are significantly more sustainable than other ways to humidify and cool your building.
Perfect. So the next question here that I thought was really interesting, and definitely something I'd be curious to learning more about, and I think is another one that would be good to start with Carl on. I think because, Carl, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe EPAC is operating in this market. The question is, how has the development of cannabis product packaging differed or exhibited similarities to other industries? I'd love to learn a little bit more about that.
Yeah, well, we do play in that market. We have a plant in Boulder, so it's kind of hard to avoid it.
Yeah.
But it's kind of crazy, to be honest. I think I was talking to a business owner just yesterday, as a matter of fact, and she was kind of walking me through the evolution stages of packaging. She happened to have been in the business for 9 years in Colorado, so she's seen it go through its paces. And I think from how packaging evolves in a market is, first there's the step that the state takes to legalize it. Then there's a period of time where the regulations have to be written by the attorneys. And those regulations are usually put in place at one point in time, followed rapidly with more changes, and all along there are oftentimes changes to what the packaging requirements are, causing the manufacturer of the cannabis product to have to change packaging. So they really, more so than other industries, they really are reluctant to order large quantities, and like the idea of being able to just print to demand and order short runs. The other thing I would say is the importance of certified child-resistant zippers is really huge. Tying that back to the sustainability issue, there are zippers that we are looking at currently that offer the potential for compostability or recyclability. We're testing them. We're not quite sure that's going to pan out right now. But in a non-sustainable option, I think anybody that plays in this market is going to find that their customers, that the brands in the cannabis market, really need certified child-resistant and resealable packaging if they're going to be a serious player in the market, in particular in the edible market.
Right, absolutely. And just to follow up on that, what have you seen in terms of graphics in that market? I know we've done a little bit of coverage on the market here at Package Printing, and just kind of how some of the graphics being implemented in this market are really, they're not sort of what you might expect. They're much more, serious looking and really kind of highly embellished, but not like cartoony in a way. So just what have you sort of seen as these brands begin to emerge and sort of explore what their consumers are reacting to on shelf from like a graphical perspective?
Well, it's kind of an evolution depending upon where the state is in its adoption of the regulations. In the early days, it's kind of the Wild West, and so you can do anything you want to with the package. You can come up with any graphics that you want, and some are cartoony and some are, more serious. But the industry in general is trying to get more serious, and project a more upscale feel and look. And so what I see with graphics are this move away from, weed-oriented messaging and graphics to a focus perhaps on the medicinal qualities or the lifestyle benefits that it has. And as a result, the graphics are changing in line with that. And then the other thing is, as much as people want great graphics to help sell their product, there's a point in which you don't want the graphics to be too good. Because they look too good, then it's appealing to to a kid, and they don't want that. And so there's this raging debate going on about what to allow from a regulatory standpoint. But a lot of what you see in the packaging, the graphics content right now, in terms of whether it has a THC stamp on it and some of the other regulatory mandated things, is just that it's being legislated to them.
Perfect. Okay. Excellent. Great. Thank you. So this question here, I think maybe Harvey, maybe this might be a good question for you because it refers to something that you've touched on in your presentations today, and it refers to the usage of smartphones during the shopping process by consumers. And in any of your research, have you come across any statistics or noticed any trends in terms of while consumers are moving through aisles in a store and they're gathering information on their smartphone, does that process maybe make it longer for them to go through the shopping process as they're sort of doing this research on the fly about products, or just have you seen any trends there in terms of I guess sort of does this make it quicker, or maybe make them take longer to go in and out of a store?
Now, there are no studies of that nature that I know of that has taken place. The whole concept of communicating with the product with your cell phone, I mean, it's so new. And what's happened, initially people thought that the QR codes, that would be the answer, but that's not the answer at all. The QR codes created an inhibition in that, first of all, they're ugly, and secondly, you had to aim your phone to it, and it was more of a burden than anything else. But the newer technologies that have come out, the newer communication technologies that are built into the substrate do not require that you aim your phone at a particular icon. It's just aiming at the whole package, and the communication will begin. So this is so new. There are really no statistics such as what you're talking about, but this is looked upon as really being the future. As people become more and more, particularly some of the older generations, become more and more accustomed to what they can do with their smartphones, and as they become more user-friendly and intuitive, you're going to see more of this taking place in supermarkets and department stores and this sort of thing. We're just at the start of that application with the use of smartphones and similar devices. Now, I have no statistics yet. They don't exist yet.
Right. Sure. No, yeah, just thought it was an interesting question and thought I might run it by you since you've done a lot of research
absolutely.
there. Great. Thank you. So here's another sort of interesting question that I'd like to get everyone's take on here, because it has to do with some definitions, and I think both Carl and Harvey, this might be a good question for both of you, given your experience around the digital printing world. So we talked a lot about the strengths of digital printing in producing short runs and medium runs and that sort of thing. So depending on who you talk to, the definition of short run can vary, and I imagine it would also vary between the different packaging formats as well. But is there any good way to maybe define what a short run is in terms of quantity ranges? Any numbers or figures that we might be able to put around that, or any good ways to determine what a short run may or may not be?
Well, that's a great question, and one that everybody asks, and we always kind of search for what the answer is.
Yeah.
I guess the short answer might be, anything under 25,000 is ideal for digital printing, but that's really not even true. We have plenty of orders that come in the 5,000 to 10,000 unit range, because we're dealing with a lot of small and medium-sized businesses. But we also deal with larger brands where run lengths of 100,000 to 250,000. are still somewhat small by conventional standards, but are ideal for digital printing because we're either using extensive versioning, so you're eliminating all those plate charges and setup costs, time, and so forth for each one of those changes that are required by the different versions. Or you're doing something with variable data, and it's the only way that you can really do that. But I would say even above the ability to do shorter runs economically with digital printing, what we're finding is time to market is really the most important criteria. If I had to stack rank why people do business with us, it's generally the time to market and the service level that they get to be able to get their product launched faster or get a promotion out quickly and stuff like that.
Perfect.
I'll jump in with
Sure.
a couple of comments on that. Well, in the short run, it varies from segment to segment. In certain industry segments, a short run could be a print run of 1, okay? But certainly not, this doesn't apply to the packaging field. But in a general sense, to me, a short run is the number you need to satisfy a market demand without having to hold on to substantial inventory. And that might vary from product to product. So what's the need before the information on the package has to change? What's the need to satisfy the demand in the marketplace? If you can do that without having to establish, inventory, to me that is the short run for a particular product.
Perfect. No, that makes sense. Absolutely. Great. So it looks like we have time for one more. Another one comes in. A lot of questions about digital printing, but that's good. We covered that a lot today. So I guess just to wrap up today, just to throw out to the panel here, what are the most common hurdles that digital package printing must overcome to be adopted by both small and large CPG companies? I guess this is referring to kind of getting the word out there to these brands producing consumer products. What are some of the hurdles to overcome to get these brands on board with digital?
Well, I think market education is always important. Digital is still new on the scene, and so getting a reach and a message out to small and medium-sized businesses that can benefit from digital printing is an important aspect to the go-to-market strategy. The sales aspect of it is very different. It's a different value proposition than selling basically on unit price. Hate to simplify it that way, versus conventional. But I think when it comes down to the larger CPGs, it's those CPGs that are looking at innovative ways to use variable data and versioning and speed to market capabilities. And so they're kind of two different markets, and you approach them in two different ways, and they both have hurdles.
Yeah, I would agree definitely, Carl. Education, training, and the way you sell digital. But there's also one other thing I'd like to add, front-end capabilities. In digital printing, front-end capabilities, understanding software and how to move it, how to integrate it with hardware is very, very important. So having a strong front-end staff, IT staff, is very, very important in the digital world.
Perfect. Absolutely. And great. Well, that should wrap it up for today. It looks like we are just about out of time. So on behalf of Package Printing and Nortech Humidity, I want to thank you for attending today's webinar, and please be sure to check out our webinar page to get information on all of our archived and upcoming webinars. And if you would, just take a minute to fill out the brief feedback survey that will appear on your screen next. We would be grateful. Your feedback will influence the webinars that we bring you in the future, and I hope to see you at the next Package Printing webinar.